Keith Smith. You can follow him on Twitter at Keith Smith NBA. He's a contributor for Real GM, Celtics blog, host of the Front Office Show. As he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. A lot of stuff has happened, Keith. Even in the mid-July, as we get to late July and the NFL is about to take over, the NBA is still at the top of the topic list, including a trade this week sending Kawhi Leonard north of the border. What did you think about the deal for Toronto?
Yeah, that one, there was some buzz that it started to build. I was out in Summer League, or out in Las Vegas for Summer League at the beginning of the month, and there was some buzz that we had heard out there, like that the Raptors were very serious and thought they could get something done. And quite frankly, a lot of us kind of dismissed it and thought it wasn't a thing. And yeah, lo and behold, here we are, Kawhi Leonard, the Raptor. And I think the Raptors did really well to only send out one heavily protected first-round pick. And they also got Danny Green back in the deal. They obviously gave up DeMar DeRozan, who's been, arguably the best Raptor of all time, and then Jakob Poeltl, who's, good development center. But, all around, this seems like one of those more old-fashioned basketball trades where both sides got something out of this.
The thinking from Toronto here, I mean, I can't imagine they feel like, all right, this guy, I get it. We'll show him our culture. He might like it here. We try to woo him. I don't have a problem with that. I don't even mind him swinging, him walking. But is that their way of saying he comes here, we take a swing, he walks, we can start over? We're not this team that everybody just looks at and says, it's Toronto. They kind of go to the back of the line and start over?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of that in the trade, too. If Kawhi works out, falls in love with Toronto and stays, then obviously that's a big win for them. If not, they've cleared their largest salary off the books, and they're able to really start to get some flexibility as things free up here over the next couple of years. And that's really important because they're going to have to, in a sense, relaunch and figure out what things are. They've gone about as far as they could go with this group, and they couldn't get over that Cleveland hump, and now as they're going to start to probably descend a little bit, you have Boston and Philadelphia who are climbing up, quickly to go over past them, not to mention a couple other teams behind them in the East, like Milwaukee and Indiana. So I think the Raptors quite wisely said, hey, this is about as much as we can do with this group as possible right now.
Yeah, how about the Spurs side of things? I mean, you look at swapping out Kawhi Leonard with DeMar DeRozan. They won 47 games last year essentially without Kawhi. But I don't know. What is their thinking? And kind of take me through what the Spurs are thinking.
Yeah, the Spurs, they want to continue to be a competitive team. They're not going to go into full rebuild mode. One of my favorite stats is that the Spurs have played 43 seasons in the NBA, and they've missed the playoffs 4 times. And 2 of those times that
which is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's unreal. And the 2 of the times they missed, it delivered David Robinson and then Tim Duncan. So I think they've made the best of anything that any NBA team could. So they're not just going to move off Kawhi. And I think people want to beat up on DeRozan because he's not the poster boy of efficiency and those kind of things. But now you have a guy who's angry and motivated, going to a place that's going to seize upon that, and he's still a 20 to 25 point per game scorer, which even if it's not in the most efficient way possible, still has a lot of value in the NBA. They're going to get a first-round pick, and they're also going to get a good developing big man in Jakob Poeltl, who I think he's being a little undersold about how big of a role he could play. The Spurs have continually developed big men, and I think he'll be the next in a long line.
Talking with Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. You're a cap guy, Keith. The numbers, I'm looking at projected cap space for the summer of 19, and I see Philadelphia in there, $36.5 million. So obviously they feel like they'll be a player. But there's a big debate here locally about, did the Sixers have a successful offseason? Was it a failure because they didn't land? They are star hunting. They didn't get that star. When you look at what Philadelphia has done with no GM in place here, how would you grade or, kind of observe what they've done this offseason?
Yeah, I'm pretty optimistic on what they did, if only for the reasons that, let's look at it. The 3 stars that were kind of on the market were Paul George, never gave anybody else a meeting. He was locked in to go back to Oklahoma City. LeBron James, Philly got involved a little late in the process there, but it really was LeBron seemed like he was locked in to going to Los Angeles. With how quickly that came together, the fact that it was a 3+1 deal, that's, locked in. Then the next is you're looking at Kawhi Leonard, and I think they made the right decision by saying, we're not putting big pieces on the table to swing the fences for this guy, one, not knowing if he's healthy, and two, not knowing if he's going to stay. So pretty quickly they pivoted. They re-signed J.J. Redick. They thought Nemanja Bjelica, who backed out, but now they've added Mike Muscala, who I think is going to be very good for them this season as the third or fourth big man in the rotation. And they basically kind of kept the powder dry for next year. Nobody got a deal longer than a year, so they're in really good shape to get into next year with enough cap space at a max free agent when there are a lot of really good players, and there's a potential for a lot of guys to be moving next summer versus this year, which seemed almost like it was a little preordained when we look back at it.
Yeah, and they made a flurry of some minor moves today and yesterday. You mentioned Muscala. They got him as part of the 3-team deal. They also traded Rashawn Holmes away. They're going to sign Jonah Bolden. So everything, and this is where kind of the divide is in this conversation. You heard the people that heard Brett Brown say, we are star hunting. They end up with nothing. But that it seems that every move they made was with two things in mind, for me anyway, Keith, which was they have one-year deals. They did not trap themselves into saying, all right, we didn't get the stars, so we'll go for the mid-level guy. They basically stayed away from the mid-level guy and went with the one-year guy so that they could be a player again next year, all while it seems to me that they focus on, and you cover the Celtics a lot, Keith, becoming more athletic on the perimeter to be able to defend those Celtic wings a lot better.
Yeah, no, they definitely did. If you look at their moves in the draft, adding Zaire Smith, that's the guy they're hoping, at some point this year can come in and play. And I know there's been a little bit of hand-wringing amongst the Philadelphia fan base of, hey, we just kind of gave away Justin Anderson and Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot. And the reality is, how many wings do you need? They're already well-stocked with kind of starting wing-level guys. And then you've got Furkan Korkmaz, you've got Zaire Smith, you've got Landry Shamet. Those guys are guys you want to play. You, as much as everybody likes to say the league's transitioning a bunch of guys that are between 6'5" and 6'10", you still can't play, 10 guys like that. Still have to have some guys that are primary ball handlers and a couple big men. So I think they really positioned. The other piece was, obviously, I think they saw one of their big weaknesses against the Celtics was they didn't have enough shooting throughout that entire series. And Muscala is a really good shooting big man, got great range from about 15 feet all the way to the three-point line. Their draft picks all signaled we're going to add, some shooters. They retained Redick. Korkmaz looks healthy, coming off a really strong summer league as far as shooting the ball. So I think they're better positioned this year to get after it and be a really competitive team. Because the other thing that I think is being forgotten is you have to factor in a year of growth for one of the youngest teams in the NBA, and they're going to have a lot of that coming forward too.
You mentioned, I see the tweet from Bobby Marks that you said order of operations matters, meaning they're going to do the Holmes deal first, then they're going to acquire Muscala, and there's a method to the madness, which would say, because there's a lot of people saying, hey, the Sixers need to get a GM here already. What's going on here? But it would suggest that they at least have their ducks in a row, it seems like.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things that is, the salary cap in the CBA is really complex, and it can be, hard to ration all through. A lot of people will look at it and say, how much cap space do we have? And then they just leave it there. And the reality is, what you need to do is you need to focus on, it's not how much you have, but how you use it in the order within which you use it. So what they're going to do is they're going to move Holmes, clear out the cap space to sign Bolden. In order to get Bolden more than a 2-year contract, you have to have cap space or part of an exception that allows you to do that. They're going to do that. Then they'll complete the Muscala deal. And that's, what kind of one of the things we heard as the 3-team trade news broke was might hold up for a day or two while Philly worked something else out. And obviously they completed that today with moving Holmes and agreeing to sign Jonah Bolden. So it really is important how you do these things. And even though Brian Colangelo is gone, there's still obviously smart people left in the front office who know how you have to sequence up the cap. I'm not doubting Brett Brown doesn't know his stuff there, but I'm sure that's not where his focus has been. So what he's basically saying is, here's what we want to do. Then he's turning it over to his cap guys, say, how do we pull this off?
Keith, I'd like to get your opinion on this because you're around this, you know the Celtics pretty well. Everybody just assumes they're getting Hayward and Kyrie back and that they're just going to jump in there and that this team is going to be obviously they're going to be a better team. You get those two players back, but how do you see them fitting all of the pieces together and the roles that these guys are going to play together? Because essentially they didn't lose anybody and they haven't added anybody. They're saying we're just going to add the 2 injured guys and stick with exactly what we had last year, which is going to make them better, no doubt about it. But do you see them being different in any way?
Yeah, that's going to be it's one of the things that Brad Stevens would even say it's a good problem to have. But there's a difference between depth and functional depth. In NBA teams, the reality is you can't have too much depth because guys want to play, whether that be veterans who are looking for a new deal, a guy like a Marcus Morris type who's on an expiring contract, or you have young guys who are still trying to establish themselves in the league. And that's something that Stevens is going to have to sort through and figure out for the Celtics. But when you really break it down, what they're going to be ultimately doing in the end of the day is Gordon Hayward's going to slot in to the minutes plus some more that Semi Ojeleye played. And then Kyrie Irving's going to come back in and he's going to play the minutes plus some more that Shane Larkin gave them. So they're going to, Larkin's not signed right now, and Ojeleye just slides further down on the roster where he should have been all along. And that's where it is. They also were very clear to me out in Las Vegas that their goal this year is it is not to be necessarily the number 1 seed or to push for as many wins as possible. It is to put themselves in position to have as deep and as long as a run as they could. And I think you're going to see them be a lot more proactive resting guys, whether that be guys sit out entire games or guys sit out chunks of games and they steal in-game rest. You might not see a Celtics starter average much more than 30 or so minutes, and that'll be how Stevens will help balance the roster a little bit.
Keith, I saw you tweet yesterday when the Sixers made this deal. You said you love Muscala in Philly. Great job bouncing back from Bjelica backing out. He's going to be great for the Sixers. I guess the question is, you add him, you lost Ersan. I guess he kind of fills that role. You lose Bellinelli. You got Wilson Chandler. Smith is a wild card. Fultz is the ultimate wild card. Do you look at the Sixers today as a better team than the one that walked off the court against the Celtics?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything they've done, they've upgraded. They did not have, if you want to call Bellinelli for Chandler being the swap, well, that's a win. Chandler can play both the 3 and the 4. He's going to give you a different look and a lot of toughness and scoring. Veteran guy. He's a guy who's not afraid to get after his teammates if they're not doing that. Muscala's going to give you just about everything you got from Ersan Ilyasova. He's going to be a really nice addition there. And then you said it. It all really hinges on Markelle Fultz. If he can get back to looking good, and I was able to spend some time around a lot of people who have seen the workouts he's doing with Drew Hanlon, and everybody says he looks a lot more like the guy who was drafted with some improvement on top of it. That's really what you want to hear. It sounds like they are really happy with the fact that he linked up with Drew Hanlon this summer, and they're going to really look for a big push from him. What he's going to be is he's probably likely to be the 6th man coming off the bench. And in a lot of ways, that's a great role for him because on the days where he's got it going, you ride him. On the days where he doesn't, he's the 6th man. That's okay. Sit down. We've got other guys who can handle the load. So I think they're really well positioned. I would be surprised they don't finish somewhere 1, 2, or 3 in the East. Anything lower than that probably means an injury or a huge bump in the development curve for the young guy.
All right, good stuff. Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. You can check him out at Real GM and his front office show. You can listen to that as well. A lot of NBA stuff continuing I don't remember a time where the NBA has trickled this deep into the summer. I mean, it seems like they are positioning themselves to be almost 10, 11 months, kind of like the NFL.
Yeah, that's exactly what they want. Everybody wants that real estate. Everybody wants to own as much of it as possible. Last year, the NBA got, in a sense, a little fortunate because the Kyrie Irving stuff happened in August and dragged along longer than, quite frankly, it should have. But this year now, you've still got major trades swinging, and we're sitting here late in July. Now, for those of us who cover the league, I think we're looking, all right, we could stop now.
You want a little downtime.
Yeah. It would be nice to, catch up and get the cap sheets updated, and heads have been spinning a little, but it's fantastic. It's, really where you want to be as a major sport. You want to have as much of the calendar eaten up as possible, and they've taken us right up to the opening of NBA training camps with, continued big moves, it seems like every couple of days.
I want to ask you real fast. You mentioned the Sixers, that they're well positioned. We know Boston's going to be there. Toronto won 59 games last year, and they're going to swap out DeRozan with Kawhi Leonard. To me, that makes them a better team, right? So, and I got to be honest, I really like what Indiana's done this offseason. I don't think that the problem is, and I said this the other day, Golden State is good and bad. Golden State's great. I love teams chasing the Goliath. The problem is the patience comes in. There's not a move out there that can be made that anybody can beat that team right now. So almost everybody is positioning themselves for 3 years down the road. But for the Eastern Conference this year, I think Indiana has gotten better. I think Milwaukee's going to be more interesting with Budenholzer in there. I think that's going to be a very interesting race in the East. Who's your favorite in the East?
Yeah, my favorite would be the Celtics just because of the depth of the players they're returning. They were a game away, one awful shooting game away from making the NBA Finals last year, and that's with having to go through LeBron James. Now they don't have to do that, so they'd still be the favorite. But there are better teams in the East. A lot of people like to beat up on the East and talk about what a bloodbath the West is going to be. That's not to say the West isn't, because it is. The West is ridiculously deep, top to bottom. But the East has improved incrementally more than what a lot of people give them credit for. And you have all these teams that said, hey, LeBron's gone. We don't have to go through him now. Now we can be the ones to be there standing. And all you want to do at the end of the year is have a chance to win it all. No one knows if Golden State's going to get there healthy. Again, that's the big thing. If they lose one player, look at that roster. There's just not much depth there, and there's not a lot of ability to add any as the season goes. And they have been very, very lucky throughout this run that they've not lost a key player for the entire season through this run. And there's a lot of teams I can tell you that no one wants to wish injuries on anybody, but everybody's kind of got their eye on. I don't know if they can pull that off for a fifth consecutive season.
All right, Keith Smith, always kind enough to join us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline at Keith Smith NBA. Follow him there. Thanks so much, Keith. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.